Hello everybody, and welcome to a tutorial playthrough of Mordheim. This is a game you just got, or you've played it before and had a little bit of struggle. This is going to be a sort of walkthrough to give you an idea of how to play it. Now, before we begin, I will show you a few things here. As you can see, this is a fresh account. I have no experience levels. Those are both things that go once we get to Warband. However, with the tutorial itself, I'm going to skip over this, but I would heavily recommend playing it to give you the how to move. It's okay. Now, for the sake of this tutorial, we are going to start with a very generic playthrough of the Mercenaries, who are a very all-rounder type of build. All warbands are perfectly okay to choose. Now, the only outliers here would definitely be the undead and also the sisters. The sisters are lacking completely in ranged attacks, and their only ranged is through magic. The undead have an interesting henchman unit that will not be gone over in this playthrough, but will be later if need be. You're going to stick with the mercenaries as they'll give us the greatest all-around look.
You've decided to brave the city of the damned in search of gold and glory. There's no shortage of those who've tried before you.
This is a nice little intro to get you set up with what they're going to be doing, but I recommend watching that for yourself. Now, your nice little tutorials here. Mordheim, City of the Damned is a game about making the most of a dire situation and is designed as a hardcore experience. The decisions you take while leading your warband are permanent, and your actions in combat may lead to irreversible injuries for your warriors. The campaign will end after the fourth time that you fail to deliver wordstone shipment requests to your faction. Plan carefully and gird yourself against the horrors of Mordheim. That phrase or tone that they take is not a lie. The beginning of Mordheim is a very volatile part of the game, more so than the late game. So before we begin, let's just take a look here at Warband Management. They're going to tell you that each warrior has a good summary, and we will go over all of these stats. And our starting resource as a level 0 is you get 1 leader, 1 hero, and 3 henchmen for a total of 5. And as you do each mission, your warband rank will raise up to a max of 10. Now, the main point you want to reach is 5. There's no way to really force this to go faster outside of winning secondary objectives and winning the mission. But trying to force those when it is not opportune can lead to a lot of injuries you just don't want to take. Now, with a level 0, there is also another system which they are not going to let us look at now, but that is the veteran system. As you play the game, you will unlock achievements effectively that will give you points towards a veteran system that lets you pick very nice upgrades for your warband that will save you a decent bit of money over the course of your campaigns. Will also let you get free armor, free weapons, enchantments, a lot of things. Now, these are all RNG based per week, but they are very helpful. Some are a lot more stable and very useful in comparison. However, we will deal with those when they arise. Skirmish we will not be looking at, as this is the PvP area of it. This is a strictly PvE tutorial. The shop is the same, but even if you did have access to it with a low level of 500 gold, I probably wouldn't try to dip into that too much until you're very certain of what you're going to be doing. Now, before we begin, we're going to take a look at our leader here as a good baseline. Now, leaders have a good variety of stats that you will want to use. Going from the top, we have the 3 physical. This is a good way to build your characters and kind of decide what nature they're going to be as far as armor, if they're going to be dodge-based, or if they're going to be tanky and heavy armor. If you are going to be a heavier unit that is meant to take the damage and try to parry away attacks, you're not going to need any of the dodge stat. However, let's just begin with some of the stats here. Strength. Each point increases your melee damage by 3%, bypasses 2% of a target's parry chance, increases a warrior's rating by 1. Now, the warrior rating can be disregarded. Any stat point you put in will raise it by 1. Now, the important thing with strength here is you'll see every 3 points increases the carrying capacity by 1. With a max carrying capacity of 6, don't worry about the max. Often this won't become too much of an issue here. Now, every character starts with 2 carrying capacity, going up on the breakpoints of 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15. There's not many times that you're going to see a character be able to reach 18. Now, funny enough, the Mercenaries do have a hero who can reach that. However, that is not a big deal. When leveling strength, I find that leveling into batches of 3 is the best policy. If you're going to level it, make sure you can hit the next break point just to get that carry capacity. Otherwise, an in-between of 6 damage is nice, but not as effective as some of the other ones. Next, we have toughness. Each level of toughness gives you 2% wounds, which is your health. It will also increase your range resistance by 1%, poison resistance by 3%, critical resistance by 1%. Now, the important thing with toughness is you may level this and see a very small increase on your character sheet as far as health, and it'll feel a little disheartening to level it. However, the critical resistance is a very good stat to gain, even if it doesn't appear so. I fell into this pitfall myself early on where I did not level it because you don't see a lot of those numbers with just how much damage is being dished out. It doesn't look all that fantastic. However, crit resistance is very, very important, and we will go over that after we get through these stats. Next, we have agility, which increases melee resistance by 1, dodge chance by 5%, increases climb, leap, and jump down test by 3%, and again, the warrior rating by 1. Melee resistance is also a very, very useful stat. Every single character has a baseline 70% chance to hit with a melee attack, and then stats that increase their chance to hit is counteracted by each percent of melee resistance. And you can get melee resistance very, very high to make it very difficult to hit a character in melee combat. Range resistance is also another stat that you saw under toughness. This is a stat that really isn't important to worry about, as the AI is not often that effective with using ranged henchmen heroes of any sort, except for story missions. They tend to leave them standing out in the open or very easily captured or ignored. If they're up in a high point, you just stay out of their line of sight, and then they have to take the long trip to run around to get into a more proper area. So, next we have the 3 mental stats. And we will start here. The mental stats, I would say, are the weakest of the 3 bunches of stats in terms of what they give you. However, every character will get a certain amount of stats in each, the physical, mental, and martial at the end. So if the points are there, they are there. You can't pull from mental to put into physical. Starting with leadership, this increases your morale value. It increases your chance to pass psychological tests by 3%, all alone, fear, and terror, and also warrior rating. Now, morale value is what every character has here. Every character brings a certain morale with your warband, and you will have a total pool of it. Now, in opposition of that is the morale impact. This is the value that is taken away from your total morale pool when that character should fall out of combat. If you level up leadership enough, you'll find that they bring more morale to the warband than is lost when they fall out of combat. However, I would not value this too greatly, as typically when you have characters falling out of combat, you are probably almost wishing that your warband would leave rather than staying in. That said, the real value of leadership is removing of fear and terror. All Alone is an interesting stat, and we will go over it. However, in most cases, having a character have to deal with All Alone is not preferred in most scenarios unless you have a really, really powerful melee character that you want to just be a tank, holding a choke point to make sure no one gets through. Often they are strong enough that the AI will choose not to fight them. However, if they are holding it against multiple opponents, you will want leadership so they don't flee or just start skipping their turn. Next, we have Intelligence. This stat is a tough one to level up unless you are a caster. However, there are skill points that you may want to do that. Intelligence will increase your spell damage by 3%, magic resistance by 1%, stun resistance by 2%, it increases your chance to pass mental conditions by 3%, stupidity, paranoia, deranged, and again, warrior rating. Now, the stun resist is nice. Having a high stun resist is effective. Passing some mental conditions will help you in some story missions. Magic resistance, again, maybe a few story missions that would be effective, but typically not worth rushing it unless you want the stun resist. And the way stuns work in this game, it's almost not ever worth it to level this unless you are doing a spellcaster who is intending to do a lot of damage with those spells. Now, the last stat under mental is alertness. This increases your initiative by 2, your range resistance by 1, your chance to pass perception tests by 3%, and again, warrior rating. Initiative is a useful stat. The way the turn order goes, I will go over, but effectively, if your initiative is higher than the other characters, they will go first every turn. So initiative is valuable there. Range resistance, again, it's nice, but not something you need to worry about. Perception, again, is a nice tool. But at a certain point, perception checks are pretty useful on one character to get an idea of where the traps are. Other than that, I don't often like to give up my strategy points to do that. We will go over that once we are in the map. So when you're looking at these stats, generally what you will be looking at is what skills you can get with these stats, more so than what the stats give you. Now I find that when you're making a long-ranged unit, alertness never hurts, because in that strange case, range resistance is helpful, because they are more likely to be shot at by other ranged characters, because they are not engaged in melee combat, which has a negative effect on their chance to be hit by ranged attacks, so someone may choose to shoot at them. However, the main thing is initiative for them. Being first on the turn is effective if you want to get the wordstone first, get out on the map and start exploring. Otherwise, I would say leadership is a good follow-up, unless you really need to deal with stupidity, paranoia, or deranged. They can be nice, and there is a unit in the game that you pretty much want to rush intelligence, even though they can't cast a spell, but they are not in this warband. All right, and our last stat allocation here is weapon skill. Well, it'll be martial, starting with weapon skill. The only thing you really need to know with martial stats is if you're going melee, go weapon skill until max. If you're going ranged, go ranged until max. And then the way I usually build my characters, I then fill up their accuracy afterwards. You can try to split the two. Like if you have a melee character, you can max it and then give them a ranged weapon and put the remaining points into that. I, however, don't do this, as you're never going to make those points high enough to feel worth the low numbers you're going to have at that point. Accuracy is the crit chance. You're always going to want that. But let's go over them anyway. So, weapon skill increases melee resistance by 1%, which is very effective when you're up close. It also increases your melee hit chance by 2%, and increases parry chance by 4%, and warrior rating. Now, there's a few things in here. You can make a melee character with a lot of dodge, and you'll just still have a lot of parry. However, parry and dodge are both systems that only can happen in opposition to each other. You can only ever have your character trying to parry an attack or dodging an attack. And we will go into that as well. Melee hit chance is always useful, and I find myself moderately lucky with this game because the way I build my characters is I rush as much hit chance as I can get, just so I have less overall complete misses. And now you can go accuracy for more crit chance before you max out your weapon or ballistic skill. I don't do that often, if ever, because I do not like my odds not being in my favor. But that choice is ultimately yours. It is your character, your warband. Build it as you like them. Next, we have ballistic skill, which effectively is just the same as melee skill. Increases range damage by 3% and range hit chance by 2%. Now, you'll notice that weapon skill does not increase damage. That is, in fact, up here with strength. So you have to keep that in mind when leveling it up. This gives you the parry chance, while ballistic skill does not give you dodge. Overall, that doesn't make a huge difference. Just know if you have a weapon skill character and you don't go a lot of strength, you may not see the numbers you were expecting out of a melee strike. And then finally, accuracy, which gives you a crit chance by 1% and crit hit damage by 1%. Also bypasses a target's dodge chance by 2%, which is a very helpful stat to have, but I never rush that because dodge, as I said, is usually only 1 or 2 at most against AI per turn, and in most cases, even if you could build a lot of accuracy to ignore the effect of dodge, it's usually just a better system to have one character take a swing, they dodge it, and then they have no more dodges, swing again, and you'll find they can't dodge anymore. Okay, now, there are some other stats down here, such as movement. Movement is something you can get more of with skills, or reduce if you're wearing heavy armor, or you get an injury that removes a leg, you end up with a peg leg. Here is initiative. It says pretty much the same as I had mentioned earlier, that the higher initiative, the earlier you go in combat. This can be changed through skills or abilities on the map, or even traps can give you or remove initiative. Morale, impact, and morale we had went over. Here is your dodge and parry chance. So this gives you a good idea what would be a better button to press. Now, both of these can be reduced. Even if you hit dodge while you're ending a turn, that 30% is reduced by 2 for each point of accuracy that a character has when taking an attack at a player. Now, the bottom here is an important one. These are all your resistances. There is poison, magic, melee, ranged, critical hit, stun, wordstone, trap, all alone, fear, and terror. As far as poison's concerned, there are poisons that will affect you, but it's rare that you want to worry about them. If you build toughness and you get it, sure, but there's not a reason to put stats for poison resistance. The ones you are going to want to worry about, as far as this entire list of resistances, is your melee, critical hit, all alone, fear, and terror. Again, all alone is nice if you have a character that's going to be out there fighting by himself. I don't often build those characters, but you can. If you are, you're going to want this as close to 100% as possible, which will take some time. Fear and terror are effective if you're fighting against a warband that has an impressive unit, or they are the undead. So keep that in mind. I usually like to build above 50% at the minimum with my characters, but that doesn't always happen. As fear and terror, when you fail the roll, will continue to roll until you pass it every turn, and being stuck with either of these effects is not good for your character. Now, the main thing to worry about here, melee resistance we went over. Their hit chance starts at 70. They can add to that 70 up to a max of 95% hit chance. Even if they have 120% hit chance, it will never go above 95% when they go to attack. However, you can reduce it 1 for 1%. This is not multiplicative. If they go to 200%, you have a 10% resistance. It doesn't reduce their chance to hit by 20. It will only reduce it by that number flat, which is the same, the more important one, which is critical hit resistance. This stat is one that you may not value early on because you think it's percentage based. But if a character has a 10% chance to crit and you have 6% critical hit resistance, it is going to reduce that by 6 flat. So what you will end up with is a 10% crit chance goes down to 4. If you build a character with enough critical hit resistance, you will find that characters have maybe 5 or less chance to crit, preferably making it enough that it is 0, but you cannot always do that based on what your character's build is. Now, here is your inventory screen where you can equip items, equipment, armor. Every character has their own choice of light, medium, heavy, depending on the character, which you can check if you look under description. You can get a quick description of what they are. The important thing here is equipment proficiencies, where you can see what melee items they can equip, ranged items, and their armors. He has no perks. He is a very generic leader. As far as his stats, if you look at these as well, they all have a left and a right number. The left number is your current, and the right number is your maximum that you can push it to, and it will go no higher. Now, for this character, he has a 16 in both weapon and ballistic, which is a very good number. Anything at a 15 and above, I find is a good number that gets very consistent hits once you've built them. As far as mental, sometimes you can go pretty high up there. More than 15 in a stat under mental is usually not worth it, as there's no abilities or skills that you train that need more than that. But sometimes you can push, as in the case of leadership, as high as you can, and you'll make it where your fear and terror is pretty much unimportant. You just aren't going to break, no matter how many enemies are there. Fear and terror is just so high that you don't have to deal with it, and even if you fail a roll, you're going to pass it next turn. Now, an important thing to also note is you cannot fill all of these out. You will not completely max a character. That's just not going to happen. So when you begin building your characters, it's best to have an idea of where you're going to go. And sometimes these characters can get some bad injuries. Particularly with parry. When your character is parry-based, if they happen to be using a shield and that's your parry, there is a chance they get an injury and they will lose their left arm. If they do, they can no longer parry that shield. So that is something to keep in mind when building your character. We will go more into that when we start getting some of these experience points. Now, as far as active skills, each character comes with one passive or active skill that is already mastered, and you're going to want to look at that because sometimes these will help you decide how to build a character. Not always. It doesn't force you to build a character that way, but some of them are very powerful. In the captain's case, his skill increases parry chance by 10%, and after a successful parry, reduces the cost of a counterattack performed in response by 1 offense point. The thing to note here is that when you parry, your character already reduces the cost of the counterattack by 1 if the parry is successful. So in this captain's case, if he parries, his counterattack, if he's using a one-hander or hasn't taken a swing for the turn with a dual-wielder two-hander, is free. It's a very powerful ability if you build him into it, which we will to show off the power of this ability. And an important thing to also note is every warband under these tabs of skills, if you look across these, there's strength, toughness, agility, going all the way down from top to bottom. And in this case, going left to right, all the way down to accuracy. But everyone also has a warband specific set of skills. In this case, for the mercenaries, they get combat expertise, flawless positioning, which is crit resistance, which is important to note. Crit resistance is a really good stat, so things like this are very useful. They have hunter, every shoot or aim, chance to recover strategy points. I don't like abilities like this because it's never high enough that I feel like it's going to go off when I need it to, and sometimes you just don't need it to go off when it does. However, flawless positioning is a kind of stable, always helping you stat. Reducing their chance to crit by 15% by maxing it is really good. However, do keep note that you are allowed 5 in your active skills and 5 in your passive. It also has 3 different warband specific, sometimes more than that, in the active. With this, you have guard stance, you have sniper shot, and you have tactician. Okay, so we've taken a look at the leader here. Let's take a look at our other list. So here's where you can hire a hero. Now, the thing to keep in mind is there is typically only one leader option per warband. If you get this without any DLC, you're going to have distinctly less choices. For the mercenaries, you're going to end up with this character here, the Youngblood, who does not have very high strength and toughness, but a bit of agility, which makes him very evasive. Very low on weapon skill, and then has 15 in ballistic skill. With a character like this, I would say, just because of the low weapon skill, it's kind of difficult to want to make him a melee-focused character. However, that is your choice. His leadership is also very low, so again, him being in melee would say a vampire is going to make him very susceptible to getting scared and fleeing from combat if surrounded. Now, with if he gets fear or terror, you don't flee, but you lose your chance to hit, you lose strategy points. It's not great. So I would choose to make this character a range-based. Now, this is a DLC character, and we will go over them later, but if you don't have these, obviously you're not going to see too much from them. This is a spellcaster, which, again, we'll see a spellcaster as we level up. She is DLC. She's immune to trap effects, which is a very useful ability. She also moves by 1 meter per movement. So for now, let's just hire the Youngblood, get him in our warband.
Completed.
And that task completed is actually what gives you the levels. And now they're introducing the veteran system. The veteran system allows you, the player, to gain ranks and earn bonuses independently of your current warband. So these transfer between warbands, and you can get up to quite a few upgrades here. Obviously, we're going to need a lot more to see any value from it. But here is the whole list, and we will go over these when we get the point. And this one, it makes no difference which one you use. You just have all these. Filling out all these slots is possible. I would not recommend it, because these can all be mastered for 2 upgrade points as opposed to how skills work, where it is a 2 points and then 4 points. This one is 1 and 1. So, let's hire some henchmen. Now, henchmen are your weakest units. Really just fodder in between. And you'll see that their stats reflect that. If you look at this unit, he has 16 weapon skill, which is a very, very high amount. He also has a good amount of strength and toughness. His agility is 10. Agility is another one of those stats that if you do not have a lot of it, going into it can be a little bit risky in my opinion, because typically, even though there is melee resistance, I prefer to build my parry-based characters with heavy armor, so just in case they do not get the parry, they're very secure. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 of this henchman, and as you can see with him, he has 18 ballistic skill, which is a very, very high ballistic skill, especially for a henchman. Really, any character. 18 is a very high number. Same with accuracy. You could build these guys into a very high crit. With ranged attacks, your hit chance is very high as long as they're not fighting characters. So with some of those, it isn't too bad, but the lower your ballistic skill means the worse chance you have of hitting targets when they're already fighting someone in melee combat. So that can be a little difficult. However, we will buy one henchman of this. So this is our warband here. I do not believe he comes with a ranged weapon, which is a little unfortunate. However, what we can do is when they're baseline, yes, his weapon skill is very low, but that is talking max. When you are at these kind of numbers, it's okay to have a low stat and do what is necessary. Okay, that has gone over all the characters. Now, the next important thing here... Oh, they will let us look at the shop, so we'll take a look here. Now, if you look in the shop, there is a crossbow, a handgun, there's light armor, all kinds of options. Now, when you're first playing this, you are only going to see items that have the white text. As your warband levels, you will see better items, ranging up to a blue coloration and then a purple. Purple being the best quality you can get, as far as what you will see in the shop, anyway. When you are looking for items, some of the best melee items you can get, especially early on, is a mace. Reason for that is if you look at the stats under some items, the Great Hammer has a whole lot of text here. The important thing is with mace, it's giving you hit chance, which is a very valuable stat to get, especially early on when everyone is swinging 170s. An extra 4% matters. Now, their damage is going to be a little bit lower, as you can see under this middle one here, 17 to 25, if you would look under something. Well, unfortunately, they do not have other weapons, but we can compare. And you'll see that a lot of these are cheaper. We do have handgun. Now, let's take a look at some other stats here. First thing to note here is this little icon here with the -10. That is an initiative. Your character has this weapon actively equipped. It has a -10 on their initiative for the turn, and every subsequent turn as long as they have that weapon. Then you have the damage number, which is straightforward. Now, this right here is only for ranged weapons. This is how far in meters this weapon can fire. This does go up if they're higher up as well, and as they get better quality, that will increase by 5 for every item. Even a bow, here it says 20, it will go from 20 to 25 and 30. The crossbow starts at 25, and it'll go 25 to 30 and 35. The last resource here is the warrior rating. So if they have this on their character, even if it's in their secondary slot, that is still going to give out the warrior rating. So keep that in mind, as the AI will often match what your warrior rating is. So if your character's not going to utilize a masterwork or a purple quality item, it is best not to have it in their offhand unless you're really planning to use it, as you're giving the AI warband a lot more resource to use against you on something you may not utilize. So, what we're going to do here is I want this hero to be ranged. If we take a look, he can use a bow, a crossbow, a dueling pistol, and a pistol. So, if we take a look in the shop, there was a handgun, but that is unusable by him. So what we will really want is a crossbow, as he can utilize that. Now, I believe he can also use a bow. Now, a thing with the crossbow, and another thing to keep in mind, is a crossbow as well as handguns, they have extra stats to fire. It costs 3 strategy points to reload this weapon, costing more every reload taken per turn. So it'll take 3 strategy points and then 4. With a handgun, same deal, and it also costs an extra offensive point, which we'll go into. So in this case, I think a bow is going to be a little bit safer because we will be able to fire that twice. This does 20 to 24 damage. This does 15 to 21, but is more likely to fire twice. And a bow has hit chance, which is very, very useful. We're going to grab that, go into his inventory, and equip that. Now, with any ranged character, it's usually a good idea to have a backup weapon on them anyway, just in case someone does fight them and you're unable to get away from that fight with your ranged character. A melee weapon will at least allow you to take swings even if they're unsuccessful. It is a better resource than sitting there with a bow that cannot do anything. Now, with these characters, they're dual wielding, and with 3 offensive points, that is worth it. You will see they come with a mace and a hammer. Now, usually I don't recommend purchasing extra items, but in this case, 2 maces are really good. If you see maces early on, I would recommend them if you do not have enough to give them out. Having these characters with a really high chance to hit is useful. I could alternatively go over here and give him a mace just to give him that extra hit, but we'll stick with the sword. In fact, what I may do alternatively here, we're going to take that off of him. We're actually going to give a mace over to here, because if you look at a sword, it allows the use of parry stance, which may be useful. We give this to him in an offhand, he now can parry. His chance to parry is low and not very useful, but that is okay. We'll still let him have that anyway. Okay, so the last important thing to do here, now that we've gone over the shop, we've built our warband, the only thing left is to go onto the table. A last thing to keep in mind is there is reserve slots. You do have 3 of them, so if a character is wounded, you can switch out the reserve with this button up here, and you just and switch them around, and you can flip-flop them that way. Okay, time for our first campaign mission. Now, when you're starting out, they're going to give you 2 options. It is not a lot of options. What you're looking at here is, if you look at the bottom, they have a Walk in the Fog. It has a skull with normal. There is Wordstone Rush, and whatever it says to the right of your difficulty, and it'll go normal, hard, brutal, and then deadly. What those means, what those difficulties add up to is scaling up. So if you're dealing with an AI and it says normal, they're going to have a small percentage boost over you, which is like 5% health. I think that's about it for normal. They are going to be dealing out the same damage as you. The resistance to things is very low. The main thing is they're going to get buffs to their damage and health as the difficulty raises. And it goes up a lot. If you go to hard difficulty, that is going to be a 15% boost to both health and damage. That's the way I usually put it in my mind. And when you go up to deadly, which is the hardest difficulty, you're looking at a 45% boost to their health and damage, which is a very, very scary fight to have. You want to take as little damage as possible. If you are just starting out, I would not recommend either brutal or deadly missions, as they are very, very difficult. You do not know how to work your way around the AI and force them into mistakes. Now, if you look at the right of difficulty, as we were, what they say there is effectively what your secondary mission is. Crush Their Will is a secondary mission where you have to steal from their cart and bring it all the way back to your cart. Every map, each warband that is there has a little idol on their cart, and you have to steal it. Do not try to do these missions, as they are very, very difficult. Pull off, mostly just due to how the AI deals with seeing any of your characters. You will often find that the fight is over and the AI has left before you even get a character to run all the way over and back. If you can avoid it, do not take that kind of mission. Next, we have Wordstone Rush, which is getting a certain amount of Wordstone and having it on your characters or in your cart at the end of the mission. these are usually a nice mission. Two that you'll want to look for is Wordstone Rush, and there is one that shows up on the map. Take a look. Crush Their Will shows up as a cart. Wordstone Rush shows up as a Wordstone. And then there is also a Skull little token that you put on there. And for that one, you are looking to take down specific units of the enemy warband and stealing an idol off of their character when you loot them. Both the Skull and Wordstone are both missions that are more possible. Usually, Wordstone Rush is the most achievable. Now, achieving these missions will get you extra resources, extra experience for your characters. If you can make those happen, you should go for them. But when you're starting out, do not rush it. It isn't worth the risk. Also, under those two, you will see a little green icon of a Wordstone that says very poor. And then the next one is a chest with a question mark that says average. Now, the way those systems work is that is not the quality of what's on the table, but the amount of them. A very poor means there's not a lot of Wordstone. You're probably looking around, say, 13 to 15 in that range. Now, loot with the box there, those are loot points that won't have Wordstone. That is average, which is fine, but again, it does not affect the quality. Sometimes a very poor mission, when you have a high warband level, will still give you a lot of high value Wordstone. And then the final thing at the bottom, and this is the most important, explains to you the two things that are going to happen. This one says each warband deploys in a wide arc. That is a very safe start. Those are okay. There's no surprises. You both just kind of walk at each other and you clash. If you look at this one has both warbands divided into 3 strike teams. When starting out, I would not recommend strike teams. Strike teams are not worth it. In almost every case, I have not liked these missions unless you are playing a very highly mobile warband, like the Skaven, or you kind of boost your own characters to do so, but typically I do not like strike teams or being scattered around the map when you're scared, and I'm sure we will deal with those missions at some point for the sake of the tutorial. In this case, I would definitely pick Wordstone Rush. It's very safe. Another thing you can do is if both missions look really bad and you don't want to take them, you do have up to 3 scouts available that you pay increasing amounts of gold to do. In this case, we have a very good mission, especially for a first mission, so let's get into it. Now, you can choose launch mission or launch and deploy. I always choose deploy.
Scouts have reported a rival warband in the vicinity. Before you can find them, a heavy fog settles over the ruins. Unable to pick up the enemy's trail, your warriors deploy from their wagon and spread out to sweep the area in search of your foe.
Okay. And on the screen, while it's loading, this is a great time to take a look at it. You can see it says gather and secure 50% of the Wordstone. This is about the typical amount. This does go up depending on the difficulty of the mission as well. And it's a great way if some of these missions, they will have 2 different starts. Someone will get strike teams, someone will be scared. One person will be, lined out from their warband cart, and the other one will be scared. It can be anything, and this is a great way to know what's happening before that. So, here we go. Now, the first thing I will say before you start a mission, and you can now look around, take a look at your character, where they're starting, press the shift on your keyboard. This will bring up your map. And you can scroll and move your mouse with this nice little circle and take a look at the map. Now, I wish this wasn't so forgiving, but the first thing you want to do is you can see right here's your cart. The AI will never go for your cart. I've never seen them do it. However, this will show you where items are. Here's where all the Wordstone is, and you can scroll up here and see that we are also fighting another set of mercenaries. If you scroll in, you can see their cart, and there are some strategies that you can scroll in and see things before you're intended to. Now, you cannot see the AI on the board, but we are going to be fighting another set of mercenaries, so they will have very similar units. Okay, now let's go ahead and put our units there. Typically, when you look at this, the best thing to look at is where do you plan to get to? With how close they are, we are probably going to end up fighting around this area. Just based on the amount of movements, it'll probably be about 2 turns. Do not charge headlong into the enemy. It doesn't work out well. Now, when trying to deploy, we have a hero, a leader, and 3 henchmen. Henchmen have a lot less stats. They cannot move as far. So when making that decision, it's usually better to put your slower units up front so that they can get to the action before everyone else is fighting and they can't be helpful. With this case, leader units typically have the highest amount of strategy points and can get where you need them to go the fastest. So, in this case, what we want to do is we're going to put him right here. As we have 5 units, I'm going to put the 3 henchmen here and the hero here, and we're going to try to grab some wordstone. And if you take note, when putting your units at the top of the screen, each unit has their initiative, and you can see what their initiative is. As all 5 of their units are actually slower than ours, we are going to be the first to move with most of our characters. Okay. And the AI will put their units pretty much immediately. And with there only being 5, this is where things get a little bit. Now, because we know, by looking at the map, there's an item right here. I'm going to take a look, because this is a great time to see how the movement works. Everyone has a little circle. This is their movement circle. Based on your number, it's how far you can move. Now, wherever you touch the outside of that circle and move through makes a new node. And that eats up, effectively, a new strategy point. With this character at the bottom left, you will see he has, in fact, 7. So he can move 7 of these circles before he's out of moves. Keep in mind, if you make a mistake moving, you can always double back on yourself. Unless you're trying to do some particular tactics, you can, in fact, get yourself trapped. And we will go over those when that situation happens. Now, our plan is to reach here, and we need wordstone. So, if we look at the left, it says we need 8. There is, in fact, 7 here, and a couple along the way. So, we could have him try to pick up an item. And I think we will. And because we know this is a useful strategy to use, if you need to find where an item is in a building, use your circle to move in. Just take a look around a corner. Right there's an item. So we can choose to grab that. If I decide I would rather not grab this item, I can run back as far as I want, and it's like I never looked. This is a very useful way to make a good judgment, and you can use this to see the enemy as well. If you ever need to make that choice, do so. For the sake of the tutorial, we are going to take this loot and see what we get. Now, at the bottom, you can see we have a few options. We are going to choose, obviously, scavenge and see what's in there. Heavy armor is pretty good. We do not have too many slots available to pick up loot, so we're not going to be too aggressive here, but heavy armor, if you ever see armor, now, of the lowest quality armor is probably not worth noting, but as you're starting out, it's probably worth it if you want to utilize heavy armor. Armbands look like they're great, but however, as the mercenaries, you cannot use these. These are only for the Chaos Warband, so don't pick these up in most cases until you're dealing with the highest quality. An axe is okay. We will take that as well. Leaving the armband because it does not even sell well either in the shop. Now, you can probably not get around this corner, but this is something you can try. As you can see, we did make that corner without giving up our movement. That is because it just checks that you go outside the circle. And sometimes you can't avoid this, but in this case we can, which gives us a lot of extra movement. And if you look here as well, we have a little bit of a dangerous situation. This little item here in front of the captain could be a trap, but that can also that sign be a trap, as well as across the street. And the best policy is to try to not run over them unless you have a character who has passed a perception check. In this case, we do not have much movement left, so we are just going to run around it. And at the end of the turn, you can choose to ambush. This ambush will attempt to attack anyone who walks into that red circle. However, charges can also be made against you if they have not entered that circle before your ambush. If someone charges through your circle to reach someone else, you will not interrupt them with an ambush, so don't try to utilize it in that way. Something to keep in mind. In this case, this ambush will do nothing because the enemy don't even know where we are yet. However, if I run this character over just to look, we'll see he has that little spiky icon underneath his character. That is telling you that that is an ambush. And the AI will have these same little icons. Now, you will not see the one above their head when looking at the enemy, but underneath you can. So looking at their feet is usually nice. However, don't get that close to look at their feet. You'll get ambushed. Now, in this case, that one is probably a trap. However, because we know that and the way the circles work, if we want to move to the edge of the circle, you would think, obviously, you have to run in a straight line. However, with how this game works, that is not the case. You can run straight around it, and you lose no movement points. Here is our first word stone. Small little green crystal. This is but a small fragment. However, for the secondary mission, this is effectively the same as the biggest of wordstone. They all count for 1. Now, what we have just taken there was a warp effect for picking up wordstone. Everyone has a flat resistance to that, and this can go higher. Some characters are just straight up immune to it. If you fail to resist the chance, these can be negative or positive. In this case, we took 11 damage. That does not happen every time. So, and taking damage is also a little rare. Taking damage early on is also a little bit scary as health values are very low. That damage number will never get much higher than that. So, it is not percentage based. And you do not have to worry about that, especially going into the late game. Now with an archer, what I plan to do is move up here. As we grab that wordstone, and we need 8, there is 7 right here. So if we can grab this as soon as possible to get away from the AI, that would be the best plan. We're going to move him up as far as possible and just end with an Overwatch. Now, Overwatch is similar to Ambush, except they will just fire whatever arrow is loaded at the range of the ranged weapon they have. This will not wait for an opportune time to shoot. If it has a target to shoot at with a 1% chance, even if they could wait one more step, they will take that immediate response. Which is not great sometimes. However, this is more of a balancing to Overwatch to not be too powerful. Now, when the AI is moving, you can change this setting so they make their movement automatically, but I like to see the AI move from time to time to make sure they are doing something correctly. This does lead to some situations where the AI will get stuck. I have not tried changing it so they don't do that. But you'll see that the AI, when they do not know, right now with the question mark, we have seen none of the enemy warband. When this is occurring, when the AI makes their moves, it is completely around getting loot and moving towards a general middle of the map. When the enemy sees you, they are less likely to stop for any kind of loot and will instead rush towards the player. This changes
a new round has started.
There are Skaven. Skaven will still prefer to pick up any wordstone. Okay, so if you look along the top, we have now seen them. If you press shift, we see they are way up here, and they are very separated. So they will have to run. One unit will have to run here. This is their leader. We are going to want to pick up a good bit of wordstone here if we can. Now, you do not believe we can pick up this wordstone without taking a little bit of a risky move here, but we're going to do it because it is a shard. Typically, you do not want to pick up wordstone in the face of the enemy because you can take debuffs. If you press B, you can rotate over through like debuffs or buffs. In this case, we got a reduction to leadership, intelligence, and alertness, which will affect our initiative, so we will be a little bit slower next turn. However, we wanted that wordstone anyway. We're just going to move here. Now, I could set an ambush, and it looks like I should attack if they would come around that corner. However, because it's so close to the corner, they can actually run into my character before the ambush triggers. So we are not going to do that and instead save the points. Okay, now, here is an interesting little strategy that is helpful if you need to move. Now, if you would pick up this wordstone and then tried to grab this wordstone, you can see that I have moved. Even though I moved just a small bit, that was an entire strategy point. However, I was already at the end of my strategy point. What you can do instead is we will start the loot, but we will cancel with right click. Now you can see our strategy point is pretty much locked in. We cannot go back to get our points. However, what you can do is you'll notice that even though I'm not on the spot where I started, you can be very far out from it. Now you'll notice if I instead try again to loot this item and take it.
Objectives updated.
I did not waste a strategy point, and we moved ever so slightly. And you can do this as many times as you want, as long as you're in range to loot. And now we can actually grab these extra 2 fragments
updated
without having wasted a single offense or a strategy point in this case. And that is what we're going to do just to get as much of this wordstone as possible before the enemy gets here. He actually got 2 resists in a row to the wordstone, which is very, very lucky. And what we're going to do is just move back here a little bit. Actually, I think what we want to do here is we're just going to set up an ambush. If you set up an ambush like this, what ends up happening is because of how the enemy has to approach, they can actually not reach him before an ambush goes off. No matter what they choose to do, he will always see that character trying to move into range to get the charge. So that is also a very useful strategy itself.
Objectives
okay.
Updated.
We're going to grab this wordstone here. We're going to grab one more. And if you take a look at his pack, we are filling them all up here.
Objectives updated.
And they can no longer hold any extra loot unless they drop or trade some out. However, you cannot trade wordstone slots. That is not allowed. Now, another thing with the AI, and this is perfect timing, as he took 11 damage. When the AI looks to attack us, if this man with less health than the rest of them is an option to attack, they will ignore other characters to try and get him first. Just because he is there. But he has to be within movement. If they cannot reach him, they will take any target they can get their hands on that turn. But if he is there, they will go for it. So in that case, we're just going to put him right here. It is unlikely they will reach us this turn. However, that is what they do. Now, we still need one more wordstone. So what we're going to do is have our hero go up here, and he's going to grab the last one.
Objective completed.
So our secondary objective is complete. However, it is not guaranteed because if any of these characters should go out of combat, they will drop their wordstone and you will have to loot it with someone else. Given that we have the wordstone we need, we're going to go over here and check the pockets of this corpse and see what she has on her. Now, this is a blue quality item. However, it is a consumable, which is a single use, and then it is gone forever. These items are not very valuable. However, they do sell on the shop, and we will do that. And given where the enemy are, they will most likely charge at us. Based on their movement, typically we could only get so far. There was a hero here, and he got to about here. So if you take a rough estimate of how far he can move, he most likely will not be able to reach this character. So what we are going to do is actually set up a spot here to hopefully catch him trying to approach us. And we will see if he does that. Waiting out the other henchmen we haven't seen yet, and then we're going to see what their leader does. I did not know that he was upstairs, so unfortunately he will not be reaching us this turn. However, AI, when they climb up, will sometimes get stuck up there, taking a lot longer to get back down than they should. So our hope is that that henchman over here decided to head towards us in this direction. Okay, now the best way to find that out is to just run over there and see if you spot them. Now, this henchman unit didn't see anybody, which for our case, because we have some wordstone debuffs, this is actually very helpful. In fact, there is the leader, and as you can see, our chance to hit is only a 64% if we would take this shot. However, what we're going to do may look unusual, but we are just checking if we can find any other henchmen before we decide to take any kind of shots against the enemy. In this case, he is kind of standing there on his own. He has a shield, which is reducing it if you look along the left side of our character, or above the 64%. You'll see with range, there's a 75% base, a 10% addition just due to his ballistic skill. That is also reduced by the other character's shield, alertness, and toughness, giving us that 64%. And also choose to aim, which will utilize more of your offensive points, or strategic points rather, to gain a 20% boost, which is useful. However, if we choose to do that, we will be left kind of standing out in the open, which is not great with an archer. So what we will do here is just take a free shot, and if it hits or doesn't, that is fine. We will still have 2 points to flee. And we got the hit. 26 damage. Now, if you press shift and mouse over his character, you can see his maximum health at 122. Now, you can see we can reload here. However, just due to how close we are, and henchmen can only fire once at the beginning of the game, we are going to retreat with this character to about... Well, we cannot go back very far. However, this is fine. As no characters are close, he should be pretty safe, and we can set up traps for anyone attempting to approach. What will happen in this next turn?
A new round has started.
Now, here is another interesting strategy, as we do know that their hero is going to reach us. This character has 97 health, while this archer has 106. Now, he is most likely able to reach that archer. However, if this character is close enough, he will choose to fight him. So our strategy here is we're going to just put him right here, and we're going to choose to dodge. Now, at a 25%, our chance to actually make this dodge happen is lower than it needs to be. Another option is you can delay your turn, which will use one of your strategy points to push him back 3 slots, which will be just behind that leader. So we will utilize that here to delay. because I believe that hero unit, or their leader, is going to be attacking him, now we can choose to set our own trap. Given that he will utilize an attack on him as he is weaker and hoping to remove the weakest unit of your warband, he will disregard that this unit is clearly sitting here waiting to attack. And here is our hero who also gets a turn, and what he is going to do is he's going to walk up and get 2 free shots on this character, and hopefully they will both hit. But at a 64, and this being Mordheim, you will probably see 1 hit if you are lucky. If you take a look at the top right, you can see our chance to hit. We rolled a 1 out of 100, so that was a very good hit. But after your hit is rolled, if it's a hit, then they will roll for crits. However, you will see he has quite a bit of toughness, and our chance to crit was in fact 0. Now we're going to try again for another hit. And that one, unfortunately, we missed. Now, we could reload for 2 as opposed to 1 because we've already reloaded. However, our best bet is to retreat now, not leave an archer standing in the open. And we'll see if our strategy was effective. He is running straight towards him and walked straight into that ambush. Now, we hit him for 55, which is a lucky hit. But now he gets to swing back. And he hit the first time on a 75%. If a character is hit by an ambush or a charge, they are given the option to swing back if they have the offensive points to do so at a 10% reduction to their hit chance. This is not a huge amount, but it is important to note. Any ambush or charge done by a character also does 50% extra damage, as they are not often available. This is, again, the henchman we delayed. As you can see, he can only move 1, but he cannot quite reach that hero. Now, what may end up happening is because now that this other henchman was hit, his health is 81, which makes him a much more effective target for the AI. So now they're going to choose to attack him, if given the chance. So for him, what we're going to do is set up an ambush. This will not be an effective ambush, as it won't be in the way to stop a charge. However, that is the best we can do with him for this. Now our leader gets to move, and he has plenty of movement and also has 2 attacks. Now, as you can see, here's the charge with a 71% chance to hit. A charge and ambush both also have a negative 10% chance to hit just for initializing them. And that is important to note. Before making any charges, it's best to look at the character, because if their values are in fact low enough that you do not need that extra damage, it's often better to not do that unless you want to save the strategy point in rare cases. In this case, we are not going to lose a point either way, so actually we could save 1 strategy point here. However, based on this character, we don't really need to do that, and I would rather take the 81% by walking up to him, as you can see. Now, because he has the mace, you will see that is also showing up with the 4% hit, which is why maces are just so effective. I enjoy having the extra hit chance, so let's see if he will hit either of these 81% chances. Now, we will get counterattacked, because that was a leader and he got his parry. That is something to keep note of, is they can always parry, and just due to the nature of what these characters do, he had the strategy point for it. However, now he can no longer parry. That is only if you use the parry stance, and it's only 1 time per turn. So we will take another attack. And that one was also successful. Now that the enemy's dead, what you can do is move your character up to loot him. Now, an important thing to note is if it's a melee character, and there is not too many characters surrounding that one unit, you can often move just slightly enough that you can loot the character and keep your movement point. He had a wordstone fragment, a shield, and a crossbow. Crossbow's 11 gold, which is pretty useful for us. Early on here, axes are nice, but melee weapon can be grabbed whenever. Heavy armor is also nice. We will have someone pick up this wordstone fragment, hopefully before the mission's done, as he will not leave those. When a character falls out of combat, at the end of turn, when everyone has made their move for the turn, they will leave. Now, they will leave behind any items they had picked up and their lucky charm, or any weapons if they have been moved. Now, a thing you can do with a character, if you want to pick up a weapon but the last character looting isn't going to be able to take them, and this is an unintentional one, but one we will utilize, you can in fact trade it out, all of his items, and then just put them back. This still flags them as moved. So, now none of those will go away. We will not be picking those up, but is it important to note that he will now keep those on the field. We are going to move this leader up here with a parry stance with a 44% chance because his health is at 85. Now, knowing when you have enough health to make that risk is something you will have to acquire over time, and you will have to make your guess on that. Mistakes will always be made with these, even with many hours. If you also take a look at the morale at the very top left, you will see that they lost a very big amount of morale with that. As a leader is a very, very important unit. Often do not want them to go out of combat. However, that was their first unit to go in. Now, this unit is a henchman that is just an archer, which makes them very susceptible. And this is what I was talking about. He is standing clearly in the open, which allows us to fire back. However, that is not the main focus of what we're gaining here. We're going to take that shield and axe, because any shields early on are very helpful. Even the basic ones. Now, they have 2 more units, and if they do not reach, as you can see, they also have 2 ranged units. Now, that unit has a handgun. Handguns have a impressive amount of range, so you want to keep that in mind, because their overwatches are very dangerous. He just stepped into a trap, but he still has movement, which could be scary here. He actually walked into our ambush. Let's see if he can hit us back. And he did. So unfortunately, if he hits this, and he did not, we were actually very, very lucky there that he missed this swing. Now we can take out their hero. If our attacks hit, of course. And we will see how that goes. If he had hit both of those, we would be unfortunately out of combat, but that is just the nature of early game Mordheim. Even the best laid strategies can fall to just bad rolls. In fact, for the AI, him missing was the unlucky part. So, if this charge hits on a 76%, this hero is already removed from combat. And he is gone. That is just the nature of how volatile the early game is for Mordheim. Now, a Great Hammer is a nice item, and what we'll do is just switch it, and now we would keep that if it would come up to that. But if you take a look at, again, the top left, the morale is at 12. At the bottom of their morale bar is a 16, meaning they are going to take a morale check as soon as their next character makes a move. As soon as their turn starts, they will be checked. Now, the way this is supposed to work is when you are under that morale value, you roll the dice to see if your warband stays. However, in this case, because they do not have any heroes or leaders still in the fight, they cannot pass this check, no matter what they roll. They could roll perfectly, and it does not matter, because at this point, they have no leaders to keep them here. Now, with an archer, as I said, they cannot fight back. Typically, you do not want to walk a unit with no points left into a fight. However, in this case, this just prevents him from doing anything. this will not matter for what is happening. However, it is important to note that with an archer, they are not allowed to fire if they cannot move. So we're just going to see if our next 2 units can make their move and, in fact, kill this unit, because every unit you take out gives 1 experience to the person who landed the killing blow. There is 1 hit, and we will reload and attempt for a second hit on a 57. These are just free shots because we know they are leaving at the end of this, so our positioning does not matter. Okay, and he has missed. We're going to take our leader up here. Now, with his points, I believe this is a trap. We're going to move around here, and we are going to take the charge to get as much damage as possible, hopefully rolling on the high end of 42. 32 is there, but unfortunately not enough damage to guarantee a kill. So the swing does not matter. And as soon as we hit end turn here, you will see that they take a warband roll, and it will fail. And after that is complete, everything ends. Now, here is a lot of information on the screen. The most important information is going to be along the left side here. If you've completed the optional objective and won the mission, you will get a complete all objectives, which is an extra 3 XP to every single unit in your warband, and also your warband rank. If you win the battle, that gives you the battleground victory, which allows your characters to go around picking up loot. The amount they pick up is based on how many units you have on the field left and your difficulty. With there only being 5 units and on normal difficulty, I believe we get 20% of the remaining loot, which basically allowed every character to pick up loot. And you will see at the end, they give you kind of an idea of what you looted, which we looted 8 fragments and 1 shard, which early on, fragments are what you're going to be looking at. Now, a particularly lucky moment is if you do the secondary objective, you also get extra rewards. And you can see we got a great Ulrican axe, which sadly none of our units can use at the moment. We got a consumable blue potion. Not very effective, but we can sell it for gold in a pinch. And a handgun of blue quality. Now, a blue item off of the first mission is insanely lucky. And we will show you that in the next battle. Along the right side, you can see that our warband was named the Gauntlet Riders. We had no units go out of combat versus the Brave Companions, and you can see we had taken down 2 out of 5, but with such few amount of units, it doesn't take much to have them rout. Most Valuable Warrior, you can see that. Now, the important thing to note is more what your values were. You can see what unit of your warband got the extra XP. So in this case, our henchman, Wolfgang Sommer, actually did 95 damage and secured 3 fragments, giving him the most points. And that is all you need to see.
A warrior needs a bit of luck and a lot of skill to win a battle. But most of all, he needs strategy.
And you get different ending talks at the end based on decisive failure or just winning the mission without the secondary objective. Then you get to see how much experience everybody gets. A decisive victory, the optional, which actually gives you 4 XP, and you always get 2 XP if a unit of your warband goes out of combat and lives the damage roll or the wound check. They will always get the 2 XP, no matter what, just for going into the mission and coming back alive. And you'll see he got 7 experience, which was 7 out of 12. If you look at the background, each one of these little lines on the top and bottom usually means when you're going to get a stat point. So we will look through all the characters. He got 6 experience and just hit the midway point, so he got 2 points. Henchmen take less to level up as they are not as effectively strong as heroes and leaders. However, do not mistake henchmen for being pushovers. They are just as effective if used properly. Heroes and leaders just get more attacks and can move further, but if they're not doing anything useful with those extra points, nothing is gained. And you'll notice, because his is less, he is also getting less skill points throughout it. So a henchman will end up with less overall points across their character, which does matter. So every character getting 6 is actually very, very useful, giving us 2 points to utilize straight out of the gate. And we got the blue. Now, as you can see, a decisive victory gave us 4 XP on the victory to our warband. If it's a normal victory, it is 2 points. Each level gives you slight benefits to what you gain in the shop, how many slots, which is the most important. Our main goal when getting through this is to get to level 5, because that is when you have every slot available. This will tell you every item. We actually got a light armor, which is very useful. You have 2 gold crowns. I don't know who grabbed that, but they've got quick hands, I suppose. The blue handgun was the highlight of this, and that was not one looted. We grabbed the crossbow, and I thought that would be a great item to utilize. However, as you can see, the handgun is very useful. Now, this will tell you that there's upkeep, which we will go over. At the end of a mission, you have to pay your units. Now, we are paying 23 gold. You can do it one by one, but here on the left is the total. The amount you pay is usually pretty reasonable. And the thing you want to keep in mind is that when a character levels up, that gives them a slight pay increase, and you'll see a lot more cost on that day if a lot of characters are leveling. Now, first thing we want to do is go over here, and as you can see, he can use a handgun. So what we're going to do is, in fact, give him the handgun. And as you can see, it has the same range as a longbow. Now, it will make it very hard for him to reload this, but with it already costing 3 strategy points, there is no reason for him not to use a handgun over a bow, as he can't shoot the bow twice anyway, as he doesn't have enough offensive points. So it's best to just utilize not only the higher quality, but just get all of his offensive points spent each turn. And he is now going to be our highest damage unit. Okay. Now, let's go through a few of the characters here. With our leader, you can see that he got 1 martial skill and 1 mental. In his case, you could look through the skills to get an idea. With him being a leader, with him being up close a lot, we're not going to need a lot of this, but in fact, a lot of leadership, just to make sure that he can stay in the battle, because I may build him a high parry build. Well, that is what I'm going to do. However, I do not know if he's going to have a lot of melee to cover him, or if we're going to leave him on his lonesome. Now, as I said, I like to go weapon skill first, so that is where we're going to put that. Switching over to the next character, they do ask you if you're okay with the points. If you're not, just hit cancel. It will put them all back where they were, but we are okay with that. Now, same with the hero, but he is a ranged character, so we're going to give him ballistic skill. Now, when I build ranged characters, as I said, they are not often in combat. So the way I build them is obviously ballistic skill. I give them alertness just to make them go earlier so they can get into their positions as quick as possible so they can start covering areas. This isn't a big help, but as I said, mental is not a huge important stat. Now, when I build my archers, you may be inclined to go agility so they can dodge if they're caught in combat. However, when I build my archers, I go a lot of toughness first. The reason for that is if an archer ever gets into combat, for me, I figure they're not going to be there very long. So what I want them to do is to have enough health to survive the attack from the unit that caught them. And if they get stuck in combat, I would rather them have the health to just power through rather than the agility. Now, in his strange case, he has 4 strength, so I may end up possibly giving him 2 strength only for the extra carry capacity, but that would be the only reason I do that. However, that would be far, far later down the line. first utilizing toughness. So if they get shot by other archers, they will have more health. And as I said, power through it. Moving on to our henchmen. They got a physical talent and they got a martial. So obviously weapon skill. Now, looking at this character, I see he can wear heavy armor, which means I'm going to build him heavy armor. In that case, when I build my character's heavy armor, I go strength and toughness. In this case, we do not have a lot of heavy armor, and I do not like to wear heavy armor early. So, pushing high toughness is nice, but with it being early game and so volatile, it's a lot of burst damage trying to kill the enemy before they get a chance. We are going to go for strength just to give him an extra carry weight. We're going to put him to about 6. I like to push 6 and then go to the toughness value of at least 9, personally. And that is for a skill, which we will get into on another video. Same henchman, same character, same build. We're going to do the same thing. Now, we have a henchman that is also ranged. Again, alertness, ballistic skill. This henchman, you'll notice he has a 7 in weapon skill. That is very, very low. I would not recommend making these melee characters. There is no value there. Unless you're going into 18 accuracy, but I will warn you that that is not a great idea. Okay, so we've put in all of our points. We've seen a mission. We've gone over some stats. After you've done all of that, you can go to the shop if you want to buy and sell, but you'll see that each mission you go through, or day rather, you do not have to go on a mission. You could just skip the day if you do not feel ready for it, but after 8 missions, the shop will get new items in stock. Now, we're going to sell these potions because, trust me, you are going to end up with a lot of items in here, and most of them you will not want. The Ulrican Axe of lowest quality is not great. I am someone who does not bring potions, especially these different ones. They have value, however, I do not utilize them. And the problem that I find is that they give you warrior rating, and I would just rather not give the AI that benefit. So we are going to click on the tent for next day.
New shipment request arrived.
And you'll see we got a shipment request, which is over here in the smuggler's den. There's a lot to go over here. However, the main important thing is you'll see up here, there is a weight requested and how many days you have. Now, you get 10 days, which is not a lot of time. We only got 15 on the first mission, which is very scarily low. But that is because we are low level, and you're going to get a lot of fragments. So if you see shards, or if you're lucky enough to see clusters early on, do pick them up. Because the way the system works is a fragment is worth 1, a shard is worth 5, and a cluster is worth 15. So if we had seen a cluster, all of this would equal the same to 1 cluster. Clusters are very valuable. And then you will have to turn that in, but we will go over that next time. And that is a 1 mission startup there. We've gone over the stats, we've seen a mission, and what we're utilizing there. We've seen a little bit of levels, but we will go over more, as I said, in the next video. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. However, that is going to be it. So, hopefully we will catch everybody in the next video. Thanks for hanging out and watching. Good night, good afternoon, good morning, whichever the case is for you. I'm out of here. Stay majestic.